Hello, and welcome back to Magnetic Masculinity Podcast, where we provide men with practical tools and strategies to bridge the gap between achievement and fulfillment so that they can live their most magnetic lives. Today, we are touching a bit on spirituality, and the topic of the day is meditation and mindfulness. And maybe before we get into it, can you explain what's meditation, mindfulness, and what's the difference between them?
Yeah, absolutely. They definitely are, in my mind or my model, they can be a little bit chicken and the egg, and that one can lead to the other, and it doesn't really matter which one leads to the other. But if we look at the word meditation, we could call it something different, which is changing our brain patterns, changing our brain waves to a different state of being. And what that looks like to different people is very different. So meditation for some people get into a meditative state and they don't even realize it. Like when you're driving a car and you get home, you're like, how did I get home? You're probably in a meditative state. Or if you're painting or knitting or sometimes golfing or going for a walk in nature, you can reach meditative states. So one of the misconceptions I see in working with people on meditation and mindfulness is that they believe that the goal of meditating is to get really good at meditating. But remember that meditating or mindfulness are tools that help us reprogram that brain, reprogram the mind a little bit, or become in a state of metacognition so that we are less reactive. We can be more mindful and present in our everyday life, in our job, with our family, in our relationships. And referring back to the parts work episode, if you haven't heard that, you can go back and listen to that. But looking at the different parts of ourselves when we're not in a state of mindfulness, presence, or metacognition. So I'm going to use those words interchangeably, which is also a state of awareness. We also did an episode specifically on awareness. When we're not in those states, what's more likely to happen is that our subconscious parts or our old outdated software is going to kind of do that hostile takeover, and we're not going to be piloting our vehicle of consciousness. We're going to be strapped in the trunk along for a ride because the software is doing its own thing and we don't actually have a clue where we are. The emotional navigation system has been hijacked and we're on we're driving down a road to crazy town. So whether you prefer meditation, and there's so many different forms of meditation. And like I said, a lot of people feel frustrated when they start meditation, and meditation to you does not have to be sitting and emptying your mind of thoughts. In fact, I would propose that emptying your mind of thoughts is not the goal at all. But whether it's a meditation or a mindfulness practice, the goal is that it impact your everyday life in a positive way so that you're able to stay more present, aware, or so that you stay in that pilot position of your vehicle of consciousness and not in old software. Now, mindfulness, again, we could define a lot of different ways. We could call it awareness. We could call it metacognition. But it's when you're in a state of presence, awareness, and considering what you're doing rather than running on subconscious programs. So like we always say, 90 to 95% of the thoughts we think, the choices we make, the actions we choose, and the patterns we experience are based on subconscious programs, typically from before the age of 7. So most people in a given day are spending most of their time in a program, in a subconscious or unconscious pattern and repetitive software that maybe does not serve them. So when we're in a mindful state, we're present. We're more like, here I am having my mushroom tea with maple syrup. Wow, the maple syrup came from these beautiful trees, and it's filled with all these amazing micronutrients and minerals, and I love the way it tastes. It's so warm. It's sort of like you can do anything mindfully, and that's what I like about mindful practices. A lot of the most high vibe or samadhi or blissed or enlightened or whatever word you want to give them, whatever metaphor, pick your metaphor, states I've achieved have been through mindful practices rather than meditation practices for me. Some people have the opposite effect, but I like mindfulness because it's something I can do all day, every day. Or it's something I can start out in small increments and apply in my everyday life that trains my brain and trains my awareness to be more present with whatever I'm doing. And when you get into those really mindful states and appreciative states, then everything you do sort of becomes kind of like a pleasure. And you feel like you're more like you're making conscious choices and you're in a meta state of awareness, again, rather than just you're not piloting your vehicle of consciousness. It's just running on auto and you're stuck in the back on the Autobahn or whatever. And there are lots of, and then back to meditation, or again, like I said, there's lots of different forms of meditation. It's something that can be trained. And like I often say to my clients, either you train your brain or your brain is training you. You master your mind or your mind is mastering you. And the goal is not to control your thoughts or control your emotions or eliminate your mind of thoughts. I think thoughts can be very helpful and very fun. If we're trying to escape our thoughts, it means that our thoughts are probably terrible, but the thoughts themselves contain information, the emotions contain information. So it's more about being in a state of curiosity and presence and mastery. And then how that applies to our everyday life, because I do also have clients who have done very strong meditation practices, sometimes for decades, but they still struggle a lot in their life. So meditation and mindfulness can lead to improvement in your life, but you can also just get really good at meditating, but not able to apply that in your everyday life, which then it's meditation itself is more like an escape than a tool for expansion.
How can men listening who might be doing some meditation identify if they are in one or the other, whether they're actually able to apply it or whether they're now using it as an escape mechanism?
Ask the people really close to you. It's one indicator. You could ask people like, do I seem present? Do I seem like able to presence your family? Are you able to sit with them and really hear them? Are you lighthearted some of the time? Not all the time. We're supposed to have emotional ups and downs at different seasons, but how often do you feel frustrated? How often do you feel triggered? How often do you fall into ego, defensive, deflecting, frustrating, agitated, triggered, activated, frustrated, stressed, overwhelmed? I think those things would be great KPIs to know if you're, if the tools that you're using are the right tools for you. Or even if the style of meditation you're doing is the meditation for you, or are you doing the meditation to avoid, I'm going to meditate so that I can avoid these uncomfortable feelings, or so that I can avoid this or that. So there's a lot of sort of nuance to it, I think, that I can help my clients really dial in to optimize their tools so that it impacts all areas of their life, even when they're not meditating or practice or doing any spiritual tool or practice.
There's another objection that came in my mind as you were giving example about enjoying your tea. A lot of men that you're working with, they are living really fast-paced lives, and they might have a thought of, I don't really have time to sit and enjoy my tea. I have to do things. How does mindfulness apply to that, or how can it add value to them being more mindful in fast-paced life that they might be living?
Well, I think that's a wonderful question. And I do work with a lot of very busy executives. And I would propose the perspective for you to consider that the busier you are, the more important these things are. And the more energy you free up by being present and not having too many tabs open at the same time, the more efficient and effective you become. And the less time you waste on being triggered or stressed or overthinking or all these things that aren't actually helpful and are actually quite self-centered actions. So if if you're in a meeting, are you in a meeting presencing the person you're in a meeting with, or are you on Twitter? And and shoveling food in your face. You know, if you're going to be in a meeting and you only have 5 minutes in between, do 1 minute of like conscious breathing, or 1 minute of a mantra, or 1 minute of like smelling an orange and thinking about what an orange tastes like, something to bring you back into the present, because it's actually going to make you so much more effective and efficient at work. And it's going to free up time. It's going to unlock your intuition, unlock your creative thinking, improve your critical thinking skills, and you're going to spend less time in ego or hostile takeovers, or in your blind spots, or in frustration, stress. And stress often is what a lot of my clients feel gets them through the day. They need that adrenaline to get through the day. But again, that's like dirty fuel in your engine, in your vehicle of consciousness. If we can get like a nice, clean, high octane fuel and all the systems are running efficiently, it's just going to be a lot easier to get that vehicle from A to B than it is when you're revving it on turbo and running on adrenaline and go, 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 and jump, jump, jump. And the brain is just automatically doing things. And you're jumping from this to this to this. You're skimming emails. You're skipping things. The average attention span nowadays is really, really like frightening, I think, in humanity. So people are constantly having to go back and fix things or deal with things they wouldn't have to deal with if they were more present and mindful in the moment. I know that this has happened to me too, where I think I read something, and then later somebody comes and says, well, why didn't you know X, Y, or Z? And I said, well, you didn't tell me. And then I go back and read the email and I'm like, oh, I missed one sentence in that email. So when I'm not mindful or present, it actually becomes like a time drama, I call them. And a lot of our time dramas are created from a place of not piloting our vehicle of consciousness, unawareness, or running in that subconscious software and having too many tabs open at the same time. Whereas, you know, 1 minute, 30 seconds throughout the day, and just asking yourself in any given moment, am I focused on what is here in front of me right now? Am I actively listening? Am I treating every person like they have something to teach me? Am I being present and mindful with the actions I'm taking? I think, again, is going to make them a lot more effective, a lot more efficient, for a lot less energy. And if you're going to get through a really stressful situation anyways, you want to get through it from like stressing and pushing and jumping and skipping and, you know, or do you want to get through it in like a centered sort of present state where you're calm and curious and connected to your intuition and connected to your left and right brain and engaged and present, you know what I mean?
Question here also would be, because as you were speaking about being present, I would think that when you're being present and mindful, you kind of lose sense of time. And a lot of your clients or people that you work with or audience listening, they might have a lot of things that I need to do at specific times. Is there a way how the things that I need to do at certain amount of times, mindfulness can affect that or kind of get in their way, in case if somebody might be listening and they're like, I don't have all the time, or like I don't want to lose the sense of the time. And then when they start to check the time, they're not really mindful anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think maybe, I'm not sure, but I think maybe there's a difference between daydreaming and mindfulness. So it sounds like what you're talking about is not a state of presence, it's a state of procrastination or dilly-dallying or distraction. But again, if you're fully present with whatever you're doing and you don't have a lot of distractions, you're going to actually have a lot more bandwidth to keep things on track. But it's not going to be from a place of like, again, burning that engine on turbo and overheating the computer and having 18 tabs open until the working memory crashes. It's going to be just from a place of everything running smoothly like a fancy, gorgeous race car.
And with this, what are some of the things that you have identified as barriers or things that are getting in a way for men to be mindful?
I think it's often a foreign concept to them. It's also something that needs to be trained. It's like a muscle, or like playing the piano, or learning golf, or anything, you know, hiking Everest, whatever you're doing. You start in small increments and you make a conscious choice to do it differently over and over and over until that becomes your new subconscious baseline. Also, when we're mindful and present and not just constantly distracting ourselves and avoiding and deflecting and projecting, is also when those emotional beach balls might come up more. So a lot of men also stay busy and don't want to drop into presence, because staying busy and avoiding is how they avoid that which wants to be presenced. Another barrier is they just don't have a practical action step of how to do it, or they've tried meditating and they don't like it. Or they've tried meditating and they just can't, quote unquote, quiet their mind. I'm like, I don't care if your mind quiets or not. What we're doing is we're trying to train it over time. So it's just getting a small chunk, whatever those are. I work with everybody's individual schedule. And sometimes it's like, hey, we've got 30 seconds every time you go pee, you go do this or that. Or before every meeting, we'd figure out which style of breath work might be the best for them, because some breath work sort of like jack us up and excite us, and some soothe our nervous system. So again, different types of meditation, different types of mindfulness, and different types of breath work are helpful for different people. It's like different tools in your toolbox. You don't use the same tool for everything.
Yeah.
And part of that is me getting to know the unique needs of each one of my clients and telling them to be curious and experiment, but to give things a fair shot.
With this, trying different tools, what are some of the ways when listeners might be going and trying out different tools? How can they know maybe like how long to try them, or what's the protocol to follow, or how to identify whether this is the tool for me or it's actually not the tool for me? I should go and try something else.
It's a great question. I think it depends how well you know yourself and how new you are to understanding yourself and to mindfulness and meditation and different tools of evolutionary mastery and mind mastery and brain training. But first of all, I would say to keep your why in mind. So that, again, if you're starting to do something new and it feels very uncomfortable, remember that when I go to the gym and I want to build a bigger bicep muscle, I start lifting weights. They're heavier than anything I've done before. I feel uncomfortable, and I don't just go, whoa, I'm uncomfortable, I'm out, I quit. So there's a fine line of keeping in mind, why do I want a bigger bicep muscle? Do I think it's going to look cute when I wear sundresses? Do I want to be able to lift my elderly dog up into the car more easily? Whatever it is, why am I, is it because I want to look cute for my husband? Is it because I want to push myself? So keeping your why in mind can be helpful. And then giving something, I'd say, a couple of weeks to a month to see if it improves the quality of your life or it doesn't improve the quality of your life. And just being curious.
Yeah. What if there's somebody who's, I tried it all, it doesn't work for me, or they just don't believe in mindfulness, or that it might be possible for them?
That's valid. I get a lot of people that have a lot of resistance to meditation, and I don't believe that everybody needs to meditate. I think it's a very helpful tool for some people. And when I did more meditation coaching, I would tell people I myself do not do what people would call meditating. I prefer a mindful practice. But I know when to use the tool of meditation, and I can bring my brain into those different states of awareness quite easily. But I also lived in a very unstimulating environment for many years, out in a forest, on an acreage. So I had very little distraction. I had an assistant to filter things for me. So I was in like a pristine environment. It was almost like monks who live in an ashram meditating for years. And I hit bliss states and samadhi states or enlightenment states or whatever. But I was also not going to work every day, dropping the kids off at soccer. I was in a very pristine environment. So I always remind people not to compare themselves to that. And that was years of, I would sometimes go months without speaking to another human being. So I was reaching these deep states, not in a typical overstimulating city where I never looked at the news. I never watched television. So if you haven't found something that works for you yet, or you have a lot of resistance and hesitation for it, again, I would look at why you want to do it, what area of your life you want to improve. And I'd say maybe you didn't try the right tool at the right time. Try it again. But don't make yourself do something if after 30 days you find it's not working for you, then it's not the right tool for you. And helping brainstorm with somebody can be very helpful of like, what are your goals? What might your barriers be? And this is something I talk a lot with my clients. I have a lot of very spiritually minded clients who have a deep spiritual practice or have been meditating and really working on themselves for decades. I like working with people at a very high level. And even in that case, I remind them, why are you applying these tools? You're applying these tools from an energy of, I have to evolve. I have to become enlightened. I'm not good enough. I need this to feel better. I want to be better than others. I want to be the best meditator. I want to be the best. I want to be the most mindful. Again, it's often the energy behind the action more than the action or tool itself, and your belief system. So to those people, I would help them find the nuances of what the energy is behind the action they're taking, why they're taking the action, so that we can take action from a place of, this could be fun, or I'm really amazing and I love myself where I am. I'm perfectly imperfect and I'm ever growing. So what can I try next that will help me grow so that I can have more fun in my life and be more present with my family and be more effective at work and have more enjoyment and fun in my life, rather than I have to do these things because I'm not good enough, or because I want to be the best, or because, so there can be lots of different reasons that those things didn't work. And are we only chasing our joy and chasing, well, I want to feel better, I want to feel better, I want to feel better, instead of remembering that sometimes feeling better and healing are not always best friends. And sometimes healing and growing and evolving involves getting uncomfortable, feeling uncomfortable, getting through the sticky, crunchy bits, letting those emotional beach balls rise, mastering that mind, expanding that muscle, that mental muscle, like we talked about with the bicep, can be a little uncomfortable. So again, it's, are we using our tools from a place of escaping and avoiding, or trying to be better, or trying to be superior, or whatever? Or are we taking them from a place of earnestness, appreciation, curiosity, and self-compassion, which is why we started this magnetic masculinity blueprint. One of the first things we talked about was self-compassion.
With this,
like, are we doing it from an energy of shame, or are we doing it from an energy of curiosity and self-compassion? That is a big distinction I see that gets people to a certain level, but keeps them stuck at a certain level.
Yeah, self-compassion, by the way, episode 9. Question on kind of intention behind taking action. Because a lot of men, and especially successful men, they're focused on results and getting results. So question would be, does that energy behind affects results? And because I'm also thinking from perspective of, if I can still get result, why should I bother about the energy behind it?
That's a great question. So I would say two things. First of all, I'd say because it's more fun and it feels better. Yeah. So you can get from A to B by pushing and grinding and forcing and punishing and shaming and judging or whatever. You can get there, but the journey is going to suck. And as soon as you get to that destination, you're still not going to feel good enough. You're still not going to feel satisfied. And you're going to need to get to the next destination. And that's why a lot of my clients have checked family, check. Ivy League education, check. Or starting their own business, check. $1 million, check. $5 million, check. But they still feel lonely, frustrated, misunderstood, and like something is missing and they don't know what it is. Or they impact others negatively, or they beat themselves up, or they experience burnout, or they just keep going and going and going, but they feel like they've never arrived. Yeah. Which in one level, we haven't ever arrived. We're always on it. We're always going. But again, are we going from a place of, woo, what next? Or are we going from a place of, I'm not good enough yet. I have to be better. Rather than, I wonder if I could be the best at this. It would be like, I have to be the best at this to be worthy of my own approval and the perceptual approval of others.
Here also a follow-up question, because if you're talking, I'm thinking that it probably, that energy behind can also affect the way, just thinking on how it can affect the result. I'm assuming that it can also affect the way you show up, which potentially can affect that result. Like,
Very
what are some
much.
of the things maybe that you have noticed that energy behind can impact or affect the way they show up to whatever it is that
You can
they're
get
doing?
way more done in way less time with way less effort. So it actually makes you more efficient and it makes your judgment better. And you don't miss things that then cost you time down the road. People will like you more. And people that like you more will want to work for you, not from a place of fear or strictness or forcing. Like you can have a boss who's like, oh God, I have to get shit done or my boss is going to flip out or I'm nervous of him. Or you can have somebody and you'll get it done. I'm not saying you won't get it done. You'll get it done. But wouldn't you like to be the boss and people are like, he's so inspiring and engaging. I just want to do an amazing job for him because he just inspires me. So how do you want the people around you to look at you? And if you're frantic, struggling, suffering, the other thing is we have this sort of, I used to have this very much. So again, I'm speaking with a mirror, not a measuring stick. Is this like, I have to show everybody how busy I am. Look at how hard I have it. It's almost like a badge of honor in society to be like, I really struggled. And I'm like, well, then you're not very good at it. Or, like maybe I admire people who are like, hey, I did a really great job. I do take pride in work. I think that we should do anything we do with excellence, whether it's making a cup of tea or, inventing a piece of software for a cell phone or whatever it is we're doing. I think we should do it with excellence. But I think there's a fine line of, again, doing things from a place of frantic, stress, forcing, grinding, and doing things from an energy of inspiration, feeling happy, enjoying the journey, making the journey part of the destination, and feeling happy and inspired and relaxed while you do those things. Because again, you're going to get them done. You're going to get them done either way. But which one's more fun? And which one's easier? But we don't have to wear this badge of honor in society of oh, I worked 60 hours a week. Look how loyal I am, or try to prove ourselves. Again, it's all this energy of not good enough. It's actually all an energy of shame. Perfectionism itself is a shame mechanism, is a shame coping mechanism. So, or a symptom of shame. So again, I think going back to that energy behind why we're doing things and freeing up more time, more energy. And again, when we're in that magnetic masculinity, things require less effort. They're more like, I get to do this and I've got so much energy and inspiration and I want to do it, rather than grinding and sludging and pushing. And, I really admire people that are like, I really do a great job and I have a super fun life and I delegate what I don't need to do to people that are excellent at it. I treat them well and things just seem to happen for me and my intuition is tuned in. A lot of the most successful men in history attribute a lot of their success to their intuition, but most people can't hear the intuition, or they can't discern between ego, intuition, and subconscious parts. But again, if we're more mindful and settled and present, we're more likely to make decisions that are in alignment, in authentic alignment, and we're going to have that magnetic energy where the people and the opportunities that come to us, the way this is commonly referred to as manifestation or the law of attraction, but it's a consequence of being in that magnetic masculinity state as a multidimensional man.
So here, I think also to emphasize the importance of the mindfulness, maybe you can walk through listeners through an example of levels of consciousness, using the example of 4 people getting into a car accident.
Okay, got it. I was like, okay, we're getting really esoteric here. I love levels of consciousness. My company is called One Consciousness Corporation. I'm like, you can get me down the esoteric road all day long. But so for instance, a lot of people think that when you're in a quote unquote higher vibe state or higher level of consciousness, that nothing bad will happen to you. And that might be partially true, that things will naturally work out for you more often. But the example I often give of these different states of consciousness, or these different states of awareness or metacognition or mindfulness or presence or integration, alignment. All of those are different metaphors for the same thing. Higher vibe, whatever. They're all just metaphors that are trying to describe this more optimized state of being. So let's say 4 people get in the exact same car accident. The first one gets out of the car and they're like, what the F? How could you do that, you jerk? What were you thinking? This is a brand new car. Give me your insurance. I'm going to sue your ass. And then being pissed off for the rest of the day, ruminating on it for 2 weeks, being angry or feeling like a victim, and getting angry at the other person. Now, a second person gets into that same car accident and they go, oh, that's about right. The universe hates me. Nothing ever works out for me. That figures. It's probably my fault. I screw everything up. And they kind of go out and they just exchange their information with the other person and feel sad and then, sink into a depression for a few days or a few weeks or a month or a few months. I've seen people that have come to me that are stuck, that are ruminating about something that happened 3-4 months ago. And I'm like, what happened 3 or 4 months ago? Let's move on. And here's some strategies that we can move on without invalidating ourselves or gaslighting ourselves. But it can be very addictive to stay in the emotions we don't prefer that are familiar to us. And it can be a very, very fun payoff for the ego, but not a fun way to live. So the third person gets in an accident and they're just like, oh, well, shit happens. This sucks. That's okay. They exchange their information with the other person. They're like, okay, sorry, man. They kind of go about their way. The fourth person, and this has literally happened to me when I've been in accidents, gets in an accident and thinks, I wonder how I can make that person's day better, because they must feel awful that they just got in an accident, even if it was their fault. If it was their fault, they're going to feel even worse because they're going to have shame going on. But I've made mistakes. So getting out of the car and saying, hey, it's okay. We all make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. What can I do for you? Let's exchange insurance information. Don't worry. It's just a car. There's car repairs. That's why we have insurance. Like how can I make that person's day brighter? And by the time you get to work, you're like, whatever, who cares? I got an accident, no big deal. And maybe even making a connection with the person you got in an accident with, and especially if it was their fault. Saying, hey, I've made mistakes. I know you probably feel terrible, but don't. You did your best. Or if you were on your phone or something, you're sure is going to learn a lesson. And I'm sorry you had to learn it that hard way, and it's coming at it with compassion. And then by the time you get to work, you've completely shaken it off. Whatever, it's just a car. I had an accident with $30,000 damage to my Jaguar. And I think it took me maybe a day to process it. And then I was perfectly fine and happy. And it didn't impact me for very long.
With these, maybe some listeners might identify themselves in one of those places.
Great. That means they're in awareness. So first of all, back to our episode about awareness, wherever you are, don't judge yourself. Be like, that's amazing. I'm in awareness.
Yeah, episode 8.
You're good.
And so okay, they first of all, they're aware so they can identify. And maybe they have a thought of, I have always been this way. And I don't know if I can change it, or maybe they want to go to the next, or one of the other examples that you mentioned, but they might feel like I have always been like this, and what is it that can help to go from one to the other?
It's just software. So first of all, you celebrate that you're in awareness. Hey, I'm kind of like an unconscious jerk. Great. I don't care. I don't mind where anybody is. I think I'm like, if you're in awareness of where it is and you desire to change it, you're already succeeding, and I celebrate you. And you've always done it that way because that's the software you had. You didn't install that software. It's not your fault, but it is your problem and you can change it. So the desire to change it, why would you change it? Let's get excited about how life would be different when you change it. And then let's look at the different systems in your vehicle of consciousness and figure out what's the quickest way to reprogram and redirect it. I don't care. I've had clients that have been in their 70s And and change really, in my experience, can be done in a lot shorter amount of time than most people believe it can. Partially because most people have a belief that it can't change. And if you have that belief, then it can't change. So we have to first believe that it's possible. Then we have to start finding evidence that it's working. And we have to start getting excited about why that change is going to impact our lives. And we're going to cheer ourselves on that road and figure out what tools help us get there as quickly and efficiently as possible. Rewrite the software, learn anything we need to learn from whatever emotions come up, find ways to help ourselves through that discomfort of expansion. Again, back to my bicep example, when you grow a bigger bicep muscle, you lift those weights, it expands, it expands. It's a bit uncomfortable. Mental, spiritual, and emotional growth is not that dissimilar to the growth of a muscle. It's just that we often avoid that. It's one of the left brain's jobs is to avoid, or whatever part of the brain is to avoid pain. So then we often avoid growth opportunities or push ourselves through it in a very uncompassionate way, which can cause more of like an expand and contract effect. And if we don't do our parts work or find out what parts of us might be in resistance to that change, then again, it's going to be 5 steps forward, 7 steps back, 3 steps forward, 5 steps back. So if we're in full alignment, all of our parts are on board, and we're not feeling like we're leaving our old self behind, because the old self or the ego might feel like it's being left behind or it's dying. Or so I like to take our little parts that might be in resistance to change and give them a promotion so that we're not creating more separation. Like we talked about in our parts work episode, it's like, I'm going to promote you from an inner critic to an inner coach, or an inner worrier to an inner warrior. You know, we give that little part of ourselves a promotion. Hey, wouldn't it be fun if we did this or that? And then it's a lot easier if we have all of the aspects of our personality on board. And we have the tools that work for us, and we know how to break down this multidimensional vehicle of consciousness and program it. You'd be amazed how quickly we can shift things. I've helped clients shift in 1 or 2 sessions things that they've struggled with for decades. It's just a matter of the right perspective and somebody holding that. Sometimes what I do with clients is I sit down and I find any resistance I have. Okay, this person's been doing this for 4 decades. They've been cheating for 4 decades. They've cheated 29 times. Can I vision a reality or a probability in the quantum where they do not do that? Yes. And I anchor that, and I anchor it, and I anchor it, and I anchor it while they're trying to get themselves on board and trying to get that internal system more cohesive. And then we try to figure out the why. What need was cheating serving you? Because it was meeting a need. Let's find a healthy way to meet that need before we change the behavior. Let's find a healthy way to get that need met. Let's not judge or hate that part of ourselves. Let's give that part of ourselves a seat at the table of our consciousness and treat it with compassion. We also want to be accountable, but how do we? So yeah, I've helped people shift really long, sometimes decades or lifetime, or maybe lifetimes of pattern very efficiently. And I like it. I like the challenge, to be honest.
Yeah, I was just even like thinking when you were talking about it, how for some people listening, it might be that thought or that belief that that's not possible, or it sounds unreal, or it might be like, oh, it was different for them, that's why you succeeded with them. What would you say?
That's normal. That's normal.
Those people.
That's normal. And we would give that part of you a voice and say, okay, part of you feels that way. That's okay. Can we also access a different part without invalidating this part? And we just start going we don't go from 0 to hero, we go from 0 to 5. And that requires some metacognition, so awareness of our thoughts. That involves some questioning our thoughts, challenging our thoughts, choosing our thoughts, or knowing when to just let the thought float away, like imagine it in your mind movie, or imagine it as your mind computer, your brain, the computer in your vehicle of consciousness. Imagine it like a pop-up on your browser. You don't have to click on the pop-up. Everybody has nonsense thoughts. Everybody has intrusive thoughts. Everybody has obnoxious thoughts. I have clients tell me, like, confess to me, like, oh my God, I had this thought or that thought. And I'm like, okay, so what? Did you act on it? They're like, no. I'm like, great. Then you didn't click on the pop-up. So it's not a problem. There's no problem if you have those thoughts, but they're just thoughts. Are they true? A lot of suffering on the planet is caused by untrue thoughts, because a lot of the thoughts we think, again, are based on that subconscious software and that program, typically from before the age of 7. So it's just a thought. Thoughts are just things. It might even be a thought that's not yours. It might be a thought that's in the collective. It might just be, different parts of you have different thoughts or different perspectives, which is why we experience internal conflict about things. Internal conflict is a sign or a KPI that our parts are not aligned on the strategic direction that we're taking that vehicle of consciousness. So great. If somebody has a lot of hesitation or resistance, I don't mind that at all. That's perfect. I welcome it. I think that everybody feels that way, and that's fine. Not everybody. I think some people feel that way and some people don't. Glass ceilings are very normal, and doubting ourselves and questioning ourselves is very common because we're living in the emotional dark ages. And good, bring it on.
And also to reiterate the importance of the mindfulness when it comes to that reprogramming, what role does mindfulness play in that?
Well, when we're in the presence, we're making conscious choices. I'm going to call it unconscious, which I understand has a lot of different meanings to it. And I don't mean it in a judgmental way. I just mean that we're in a hostile takeover, or we're in those subconscious programs. We're not making conscious choices. We're in that zombie, automatic, repetitive mode. So over time, mindfulness trains us to be present and have metacognition, because you can't heal what you're not aware of. So the first step is awareness. And awareness easily comes to the surface in an environment of mindfulness or meditation or presence. It allows us to maybe turn down those 40 radio stations of information and all the different things distracting us, and our brain, our dopamine systems being hijacked by a very stimulating environment that we all live in. It's giving that a chance to slow down and start to just at least be able to step into that awareness so that we can make a conscious choice to do it differently over and over and over until that becomes our new subconscious baseline or our new software. And again, that requires presence and mindfulness, which is like a muscle or like a sport or like anything that we can train. And is one of the most rewarding things that we can train others to. And it really makes others feel more connected to us when we're able to be presenced. Most people are not presencing each other because they're too busy worrying about their own fears, their own beliefs, their own, am I good enough, what everybody else is thinking of me. Their brain is racing, they're thinking thoughts, their brain is skipping, jumping, inserting assumptions, because that's what brains do, filling in the blanks, because we don't have very good attention spans. And then nobody feels truly presenced. And if we want to receive more presence, well, is that true? I'm very good at presencing people, but I sometimes feel like I don't get as much presencing. So I'm actually not going to say that, because a lot of people on the planet are not capable of it at this time. But it's the greatest gift that you can give to anybody. And if you want to have exciting, delicious, amazing, fun, sexual, dynamic, rewarding relationships, meaningful friendships, meaningful work relationships, there is nothing more intoxicating to humans than somebody who can presence them and presence themselves. Somebody who's in self-awareness. I think self-awareness and authenticity should be like the two primary goals of the human species right now, not enlightenment, not whatever we're reaching for. I think that those things that we're reaching for can be a consequence of self-awareness and authenticity. And at that time, you'll be having so much fun, and you'll feel so fulfilled, you won't care about anything else. You won't feel like you need to be anywhere else. So, and again, it's never about judging wherever you're at. I don't care where you're at. We can make quantum leaps. We can have, you can have massive shifts. A lot of it is just thoughts. We're going to do an episode just on thoughts, where we talk about how a lot of my clients can take their suffering from a 400, or their stress from a 400 to a 40 instantly, using the power of thought. I have a webinar about that where I challenge people. I'm like, most of your suffering on this planet are just based on untrue nonsense thoughts. And we'll teach people how to play the what if game, which is a game I play with my clients to help them very quickly come into a realignment without invalidating bypassing or resisting their fear beliefs or parts of them that do not want to be on board with the change.
So that's mindfulness. Anything you want to add on top of it?
So let's add something that people could do starting mindfulness, starting to reprogram their thoughts, is just observe your thoughts. Don't try to stop them. Don't try to control them. Don't judge them. Don't resist them. Just kind of watch your thoughts. Learn to start observing your thoughts so that you're not in that program. You can do little mindful things like, say you have to wash the dishes. Just pause. Don't have your phone on. Wash the dishes mindfully. Just be present. Just think about, how would somebody who really cared about washing this dish wash this dish? Just slow down a little bit. Give your nervous system and your brain time to sort of recalibrate. Start with 5 minutes a day. Start with a morning routine. We talked a little bit about routines and how helpful they can be in optimizing our human experience, and especially for the multidimensional man who's an evolutionary leader, helping us evolve out of the emotional dark ages. Do a 3-minute breathwork practice. Something that people often find helpful is box breathing. And box breathing is one of my favorite breathing tools, because it doesn't jack up our nervous system like some of them that's supposed to bring us into high states by depriving ourselves of oxygen, which there's a time and a place for that to energize ourselves. But box breathing gives our mind something to do. So it's sort of slowing the mind down by saying, hey, you go, mind, here, ego, I have a really important job for you. And it's like, okay, I got that. And then it can let our other sort of more intuitive thoughts come to the surface, and it can calm down our nervous system. So say you have a meeting, all it is pick a number. I could do it for 5 seconds. I could do it for 7 seconds. I could do it for 8 seconds, but I'm going to breathe in for 5 seconds. So and I'm going to breathe as deep as I can into my chest, but also into my belly. A lot of us hold our breath or have developed unhelpful breath patterns. I'm going to hold it for 5 seconds, hold it, and see if how much breath I can get down into that belly area, where we often avoid it because that's where our emotional bodies live. And we have developed these very sort of shallow breathing patterns as humans. So try to get it, see if your belly pushes out in for 5 seconds. When you feel like you can't anymore, take a little sip more, then hold it for 5 seconds. Then you're going to slowly breathe out for 5 seconds. Push out as much air as you can till you feel as empty as you can in that 5 seconds, or 7 seconds if you need more time. Then hold yourself empty at the bottom of that box, is holding yourself empty for 5 seconds. And then starting again with in, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, into that belly and the chest. Hold. So box breathing, you can do it for 30 seconds, and it can really change. You really change your state or your vibration. And that's a very easy tool that you can do while you're walking down the hall, while you're driving, that can very quickly sort of change your state, give your monkey mind something to do, and so that you can start to connect to your higher self or God or the universe or source or your own nervous system. Whatever belief system you prefer is totally valid.
And as always, if you have any questions or comments or suggestions, there will be a link in show notes in whatever platform you're listening on. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can always comment below as well. And you might even give us some ideas or some topics we can touch on in future episodes, or questions that you want Sandy to answer.
Sorry, I totally interrupted. It's one of my unmindful my unmindful traits. But we didn't talk all that much about meditation. And I just want to quickly touch and say, if you believe you can't meditate, you're wrong. Flat out. And meditation to you might be, again, golfing. It might be walking. It might be painting, it might be writing, it might be driving, it might be whatever. It's just learning to master that mind by being able to bring yourself into those states. And if you want to sit for 10 minutes and watch your thoughts, and the whole time they go, Sandy's an idiot. That podcast was wrong. I can't meditate. I'm the worst meditator. She doesn't know what it's like to live in my mind. My mind isn't capable of it. I always fail at meditating. I'm a stupid meditator. I don't care. If you watch that happen for 10 minutes, you succeeded. Because it's just, again, sort of becoming aware of those thoughts without attaching to them. It's just watching them. Okay. It's watching. We want to get out of the, I'm the actor in my mind movie, and we want to start to become the writer, the producer, the director, and the star of our mind movie. So even if it's just watching your thoughts for 10 minutes and they go cuckoo the whole time, great, you nailed it. Easy. You just succeeded. You're a great meditator. Congratulations. And yeah, if anybody ever finds that helpful, we could do a whole episode on different meditation styles and techniques. But yeah, just try different things, see what works for you.
And next week, we are touching on and going into what I think many people might see as woo-woo, law of attraction, or as you call it, law of magnetism.
Right. Becoming magnetic, and how that some of these universal laws play into us to help us, again, have more fun and more results with less effort and time, which I think is always a win.
All right. Well, we will see you next week.
And I'm going to explain why the law of attraction or manifestation fails for most people.
Ooh.
Or why they don't get results. I'm going to give you all the hacks, all the tips, all the tricks of understanding, and teach you how and why you are a powerful manifester. So yeah, that'll be a fun episode. And then we will also do an episode primed just on thoughts to help men understand some of those tools that they can apply right away to make quantum leaps in their evolution, massive shifts with very little time and effort.
Yeah. So tune in for those, because those will be really, really valuable. As all of them, I think.
We might be biased, but yes, I hope they're helpful for people.
All right. We will see you next week.
Thank you so much. Bye for now.